Democrats just love talking about President Trump's plan to shut down the Department of Education like it's the end of the world or something like that. But what they refuse to talk about is how the president is actually saving education with this move. As Education Secretary Linda McMahon put it, she's working with Congress and state leaders to eliminate the bureaucracy responsibility. Now, part of this is Trump's recently signed executive order that directs McMahon to make or to take all necessary steps to facilitate the closure of the Department of Education and also to return education authority back to the states. And McMahon assures the American people that the department will continue to support K through 12 students, students with special needs, college student borrowers, and others while working with the states to give them control over education. So what's happening with the Department of Education exactly? Well, as one of our founding fathers, Patrick Henry, put it, the Constitution is not an instrument for the government to restrain the people. It's an instrument for the people to restrain the government. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt explained it this way. President Trump is taking on a federal bureaucracy that has taken more than $3 trillion from American taxpayers since its inception in 1979. Why? Because the investment just is not paying off. Trump Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt pointed out declining test scores in reading, writing, and math. Proficiency levels at record lows for 8th graders, for 4th graders, at every level in every state across the country. This is pretty freaking sad if you think about it. And while we're on the topic of dropping scores, the World Happiness Report card just came out and it found that the U.S. dropped to its lowest ever place on a list of the happiest countries to live in. So Democrats are trying to pin it on President Trump, but see, the 2025 ranked people quality of life from 2022 to 2024, while former President Joe Biden was still in office. This pretty much confirms what we've been saying all along, that former President Joe Biden's ghost is still haunting the Democratic Party and our country. I mean, he's got his son's pardon and is now living it up at Rehoboth Beach, but his legacy in the White House, one stained by a botched retreat from Afghanistan, censorship, and inflation, it's left his mark on his party's reputation, so much so that they're facing an unprecedentedly bad approval rating, not to mention a country that's worse for wear. So now President Trump is making some pretty big moves to get his country back on the right track. All we need to do is hopefully sit back, sit tight, trust the process, especially with their plans to eliminate the Department of Education. Here, check this out.
Today we take a very historic action that was 45 years in the making. In a few moments, I will sign an executive order to begin eliminating the Federal Department of Education once and for all. And it sounds strange, doesn't it? Department of Education, we're going to eliminate it, and everybody knows it's right. And the Democrats know it's right, and I hope they're going to be voting for it because ultimately it may come before them, but everybody knows it's right, and we have to get our children educated. We're not doing well with the world of education in this country, and we haven't for a long time. And we're pleased to be joined today by the woman who I chose because she's an extraordinary person. And hopefully she will be our last Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon. Linda.
Now, I especially like what I saw in the comments. Somebody saying how they worked for the Department of Education for 10 years and they actually agree with this executive order. I mean, it's not hard to see why. It's just Democrats and their mainstream media trying to make this kind of like into this huge thing when in reality, it's more of a streamlining of the bureaucratic education system. Education Secretary Linda McMahon even addressed the tired criticism about it, saying that closing the department doesn't mean cutting off funds from those who depend on them. They will continue to support K through 12 students, students with special needs, college student borrowers, and others who rely on essential programs. And instead of the nightmare scenario that Democrats are trying to paint, McMahon's education department is actually going to be painting the law and eliminating the bureaucracy responsibility by working with Congress and state leaders to ensure a lawful and orderly transition. Their goal? Taking a significant step forward toward toward giving parents and states control over their children's education. She said teachers will be unshackled from burdensome regulations and paperwork, empowering them to get back to teaching basic subjects. More importantly, taxpayers will no longer be burdened with tens of billions of dollars of waste on progressive social experiments and obsolete programs. And in accomplishing this, McMahon believes K through 12 and college students will be relieved of the drudgery caused by administrative burdens and positioned to achieve success in a future career that they love. Now, like I say, guys, streamlining the executive order does not abolish the department, but rather kind of like sizes it down or downsizes it as it calls for the uninterrupted delivery of services, programs, and benefits on which Americans rely. And just in time, too. In January, new National Assessment of Educational Process data showed that in 2024, 1/3 of 8th graders, the largest percentage on record, failed to reach reading level expectations. That's bad news, guys. That means there's a lot of kids out there that can't technically read by the 8th grade. Now, it also shows that student scores in reading have been on a decline since 2019. So right about the time Biden came into the picture. Now, the White House talked about it in their fact sheet. They said since 1979, the United States Department of Education has spent over $3 trillion with virtually nothing to show for it, despite per pupil spending having increased by more than 245% over that period. There's been virtually no measurable improvement in student achievements. So here's Fox covering Democrats failing to address this issue and White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt shutting them all down. Watch this.
Is making good on some key campaign promises this week, and later today, he's scheduled to sign an executive order to eliminate the Department of Education. It directs Education Secretary Linda McMahon to take all necessary steps to close that department and return power for education to the states. It's a move that will need congressional approval and will have to overcome a Democratic filibuster. The Nation's report card, just to remind us of how we got here, shows dismal results. Let's just take 4th and 8th grade students for an example. Nearly 2/3 of those students did not meet basic reading and math standards. Cue the Democrat outrage.
He's cutting your education funds, and so your kids don't get a great education, and your school taxes will go up for that.
This is a fire alarm moment for parents and for children.
President Trump is failing America's children by making cuts to public education in this country.
Trump administration's efforts to eliminate the Department of Education are not only wrong, they are illegal.
Caroline, they're more upset with the president than they are with the fact that our 4th and 8th grade kids are not proficient in reading and math.
President Trump is not failing America's children. He is saving America's children with this action that he will take later today, directing Linda McMahon, our great Secretary of Education, to dismantle this federal bureaucracy that has taken more than $3 trillion from the American taxpayer since its inception in 1979. And what have we had as a result of that investment in our children's education? Declining test scores in reading, writing, and math. Proficiency levels at record lows for 8th graders, for 4th graders, at every level in every state across this country. That's why the president is returning education back to the people, to those closest to our students in our classrooms, and that is teachers and educators and parents who know what is best for their children. And we are excited about this event that will be here later in the afternoon at the White House. We will have parents and educators and students and also governors from across the country who are excited to embrace this new responsibility of educating our nation's children. I will add one more point. The Department of Education has never educated a child. All it has ever done is stolen money from the taxpayers for more regulation that has hurt our children's education. And it's about time a president does something about it. And thank God President Trump is.
You heard Democrats. They're again painting this as a threat to democracy and again showing how out of touch that they are with the American people. They don't talk about dropping test scores and our kids getting left behind. Well, Caroline Leavitt put them in their place, didn't she? She said President Trump is not failing America's children. He's saving America's children with this action, returning education back to the people, to those closest to our students and our classrooms. And that is teachers and educators and parents who know what's best for their children. Like Trump said, everybody wants this. Urgent warning, guys. The job market is collapsing. The economy is shrinking fast. Layoffs are skyrocketing. The Trump tariffs are already shaking industries. The media won't tell you this, but most high-paying jobs jobs, they're disappearing. And the ones that do remain, they're soon going to be out of reach. But here's the good news, guys. I've put together a list of 30 plus jobs that pay around $100,000 per year without a degree. These are recession-proof jobs, and some are even set to explode in demand thanks to this economic shakeup. No college degree required, no student debt, just real jobs that pay. But I promise, guys, this list is not going to be available forever. So get it right now. Get it before these jobs are flooded by the competition. I'm going to go ahead and leave a link down below so you can get your free list of the 30 plus jobs that pay over $100,000 without a college degree. So download this list before it's too late. Because while student scores continue to plunge, national teachers unions frequently promoted left-wing causes such as critical race theory, gun control, and gender ideology. And so this is why Caroline Leavitt said that the Department of Education has never educated a child. All it's ever done is stolen money from the taxpayers for more regulations that has hurt our children's education. Case in point, the Department of Education spent over $100 million on diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts using grants intended to promote mental health. Plus, Washington, D.C. and 20 states, including California and New York, are now using taxpayer money to sue the Trump administration and stop the DOJ-recommended layoffs at the department, federal workers who President Trump said weren't showing up for work. So let me know if you guys agree with streamlining the education department and putting it back in the hands of the states. Just drop a quick yes in the comments down below. Hit the like button to show your support, guys. And I highly recommend subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. All right, guys, so it's not just the kids' test scores that are dropping during Biden's reign. Our overall happiness as a country too. I mean, just watch CBS News of all people talk about it and make it sound like it's the current administration's fault here. Check this out.
A new study released this morning says fewer of us are feeling happy here in the United States. That's according to the annual World Happiness Report. As it turns out, you'll have to cross an ocean to find the happiest place on earth. Finland came in at number 1 in the report, followed by Denmark, Iceland, Sweden, and the Netherlands. The U.S. came in way down at number 24, which is its lowest ranking since the report was first published in 2012.
See, he didn't mention the fact that the 2025 Happiness Report ranked 147 countries by their happiness levels based on the population's average evaluation of their quality of life from, get this, guys, from 2022 to 2024. This was while President Joe Biden was still in office. So yeah, let me get the facts straight for you guys. The report rated the United States during the Biden administration in the 24th place, its lowest spot ever. Now, I wonder why that is. Well, we all know how Americans were left grappling with a whole lot of issues during Biden's presidency, including a massive influx of illegal immigrants, high crime rates, rampant inflation, and a serious cost of living crisis. But recently, a CNN poll found that the Democratic Party's approval rating has plummeted to a record low, clocking in at a miserable 29%. Now, since the beginning of the Biden-Harris administration in January, the approval rating has dropped a whopping 20 points. Yep, it's that bad, guys. So what's really going on here? There's no hiding the fact that the country was in a miserable state during Biden's time. The World Happiness Report proves that. But really, Democrats made it even worse with their messy, all over the place messaging since Joe Biden's first address to Congress. So what they're doing now isn't helping things either. I mean, Americans like Elon Musk and Tesla owners aren't exactly thrilled with a party whose radical fringe is out there firebombing dealerships and electric charging stations left and right. Now, guys, I wish I was exaggerating about these things, but these are actually happening right now, partly thanks to some very inflammatory messaging from Democrats. But, you know, if we're being totally honest here, one of the biggest reasons the Democrats failed and are continuing to fail really just kind of boils down to 2 words: Joe Biden. So let's rewind just for a second here. We all know Biden's presidency was basically a temporary band-aid covering up some pretty deep internal divisions within the Democratic Party, divisions that have been boiling ever since President Trump shocked the world back in 2016. And it's just now everything's being brought out in the open and we're watching the whole party implode in real time. You even got high-profile Democrats like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez practically calling for Chuck Schumer's head on a platter. But remember, back in 2019 and 2020, the Democrats, they tried their hardest to paper over their internal civil war by rallying behind Biden, the safe, boring, normal candidate. And it worked. They leveraged pandemic chaos, slammed Trump relentlessly, and they sold Americans a quote-unquote return to normal. And what's more normal than a lifelong politician straight out of the DC swamp? But let's be be honest, guys, President Biden's presidency was anything but normal. In fact, it was pretty much a complete disaster. I mean, he ran as a moderate, centrist guy, but he ended up governing like a wannabe FDR obsessed with kicking conservative grandmas off of Facebook rather than actually handling runaway inflation or crises like the botched Afghanistan withdrawal. And let's not even pretend like we didn't notice. Biden wasn't exactly sharp. He was clearly struggling mentally and cognitively throughout his entire presidency, even though the Democratic Party insisted he was sharp as ever right up until July 2024. That was when the wheels fell off and Kamala Harris had to take over. A lot of help that did, right? So here's the truth. Americans don't forget lies that easily. You can't prop up an elderly president who's clearly declining mentally, gaslight the public for months and years about it constantly, and then expect people to just kind of move on. Americans also have not forgotten the Biden family's shady influence peddling scandals, serious corruption allegations, or Biden's controversial last-minute pardon of his son, Hunter Biden, which, by the way, they blatantly lied about doing that as well. So let's just say right now, Biden's legacy is lingering everywhere. It's defining every action that the Democrats take. And until they find a fresh face with a clear vision who publicly distances themselves from Biden's failures, they're going to be stuck living in the shadow of his disastrous presidency. So why don't they take a page out of Trump's book and actually listen to the American people for a change? I mean, I don't think it's going to be any worse than what the World Happiness Report revealed about our country during the Biden administration, right? You know what I mean? Anyway, drop a quick yes and no in the comments down below, guys. Let me know what your thoughts are on this one. And for more in-depth discussions, check out our recommended videos at the end of this one. As always, thanks so much for hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. We'll see you guys next time.